The soft hum of blow dryers and the sharp snip of scissors filled the air at one of the city's most luxurious salons. This wasn't just any ordinary place. The chandeliers sparkled with opulence, every mirror was rimmed with gold, and the smell of premium hair products lingered in the air like a subtle yet persistent reminder of wealth and sophistication. This was the kind of salon where only the elite walked in: celebrities, CEOs, socialites, the sort of clientele who didn't just come to get a haircut, but to make a statement. It was a slow Wednesday afternoon when he walked in. At first glance, no one paid much attention. He wasn't wearing the kind of tailored suit or designer sneakers their usual patrons favored. Instead, he had on a simple black t-shirt, well-worn jeans, and scuffed-up boots that hinted at years of wear. His hair was slightly disheveled, falling just past his shoulders, and he carried an air of quiet confidence that was almost easy to miss. The receptionist at the front desk, a young woman named Mia, glanced up from her phone, barely suppressing a sigh. She had grown used to sizing people up the moment they walked in, and this man didn't scream money or influence. If anything, he looked like someone who might have wandered in by mistake. She forced a polite smile, though it didn't quite reach her eyes. "Can I help you?" she asked, her tone bordering on dismissive. The man gave her a small, almost shy smile. "I was hoping to get a haircut," he said, his voice calm and unassuming. Mia hesitated, her eyes flickering over him again. Something about him seemed vaguely familiar, but she couldn't quite place it. Still, this was a high-end salon, and walk-ins were practically unheard of. "We're fully booked," she said curtly, not bothering to check the schedule. Behind the reception desk, another stylist, Serena, leaned in to whisper, just loud enough for Mia to hear. "Who does he think he is? This isn't some corner barbershop." They both stifled quiet laughter, assuming the man couldn't hear them. But he did. He heard every word. The man's expression didn't change. If he felt insulted, he didn't show it. Instead, he nodded politely. "No problem. I can wait," he said simply, taking a seat in the waiting area without another word. The stylists exchanged amused glances, wondering why he didn't just leave. Didn't he understand where he was? This was a place for the elite, for people who could drop thousands of dollars on a haircut without blinking an eye. Time passed slowly, and the stylists began to forget about him as they tended to their high-profile clients. Celebrities and influencers came and went, their appointments meticulously planned, their every need catered to. Meanwhile, the man sat quietly in the corner, scrolling through his phone, seemingly unbothered by the cold reception he had received. It wasn't until much later, when one of the senior stylists, Marco, stepped out of his private suite that things began to shift. Marco was the kind of person who could sense energy in a room, and the moment his eyes landed on the man in the waiting area, he froze. There was something unmistakable about him, something that even the simplest outfit couldn't hide. Marco's eyes widened as recognition dawned. "Wait a minute," he muttered under his breath, his heart skipping a beat. He quickly turned to Mia, who was scrolling through her phone again, oblivious to the tension building in the room. "Do you know who that is?" he hissed, his voice barely audible but urgent. Mia looked up, confused. "Who? The guy sitting over there?" Marco nodded, his eyes never leaving the man. "That's Keanu Reeves." Mia blinked, the name taking a moment to register. And then, like a tidal wave, realization hit. Her face turned pale as she glanced back at the man who had been sitting patiently all this time. It couldn't be, could it? Her mind raced back to the dismissive tone she had used, the snide comments Serena had made, the way they had both assumed he didn't belong here. But now, as the pieces fell into place, she felt her stomach drop. "Let me know if you'd like me to expand this further or refine any part." Mia's heart pounded as she stole another glance at the man who had been sitting quietly all this time. It was undeniable now. The more she looked at him, the more she saw the truth. The casual clothes, the quiet demeanor, the messy hair. It all made sense. Keanu Reeves wasn't the type to flaunt his fame. He was known for being down-to-earth, humble, even reserved. And here he was, right in their salon, completely unnoticed until now. She exchanged a panicked look with Marco, whose face was a mix of astonishment and guilt. "What do we do?" she whispered, her voice shaky. Marco didn't answer immediately. He was staring at Keanu, who had his head down, seemingly engrossed in something on his phone. It struck Marco how unassuming he looked, nothing like the larger-than-life action hero he portrayed in movies. The realization made the earlier rudeness from the staff sting even more. Meanwhile, Serena, still oblivious to what was happening, walked by and muttered under her breath, "Is he still here? Doesn't he get the hint?" "Serena," Marco snapped, his tone sharp enough to make her stop in her tracks. "What?" she asked, startled. Marco leaned in, lowering his voice. "That man sitting over there, that's Keanu Reeves." Serena frowned, clearly skeptical. "No way. Keanu Reeves wouldn't just walk into a salon like this. He's a movie star." "Exactly," Marco shot back. "And he doesn't act like one. That's why no one noticed. But trust me, it's him." Serena's eyes widened as she turned to get a better look. Her expression shifted from doubt to shock as she started to recognize the features. The chiseled jawline, the piercing eyes, the unmistakable air of someone who didn't need to prove anything to anyone. "Oh my God," she whispered, her hand flying to her mouth. The atmosphere in the salon changed instantly. The staff, who had been bustling about, suddenly became quieter, stealing glances at Keanu from behind their stations. The realization of who he was spread like wildfire, and with it came a wave of guilt. Everyone was acutely aware of how they had treated him when he first walked in. Mia felt a lump in her throat as she replayed the moment she had dismissed him without a second thought. She had judged him based on his appearance, on the assumption that someone dressed so simply couldn't possibly belong in a place like this. The memory made her stomach churn. But Keanu seemed completely unfazed. He continued to sit there, calm and patient, as if he hadn't noticed, or didn't care, how he had been treated. Marco knew he had to act. Taking a deep breath, he approached Keanu, his heart pounding. "Mr. Reeves," he said cautiously, his voice trembling slightly. Keanu looked up, his expression soft and kind. "Yes." "I'm so sorry for the wait," Marco said quickly. "If you'll come with me, I'd be honored to take care of you personally." Keanu smiled, and it was the kind of smile that instantly put people at ease. "Thank you," he said simply, standing up and following Marco toward his private station. As they walked past the other stylists, there was a noticeable shift in their demeanor. Heads turned, conversations hushed, and a palpable tension filled the room. Everyone was watching, wondering how Marco would handle the situation, and silently praying that Keanu wouldn't hold their earlier behavior against them. Once they reached the station, Marco pulled out the chair for Keanu, who sat down gracefully. "What can I do for you today?" Marco asked, trying to keep his voice steady. Keanu ran a hand through his hair, which fell in loose waves around his face. "Just a trim," he said. "Nothing fancy. I just wanted to clean it up a bit." Marco nodded, his hands trembling slightly as he prepared his tools. He had worked with plenty of celebrities before, but this felt different. Keanu's humility made him seem more human, more approachable, and it only amplified Marco's determination to make up for the earlier treatment. As Marco began working, the rest of the salon buzzed with quiet whispers. The staff were desperate to know what was happening, but too afraid to approach. Mia stood frozen behind the desk, her mind racing with guilt and worry. Would he say something? Would he mention how he'd been treated when he first arrived? But Keanu didn't. He sat there calmly, chatting with Marco about mundane things, movies, music, the weather. There wasn't a hint of resentment or anger in his tone. If anything, he seemed genuinely interested in what Marco had to say. The more they talked, the more Marco relaxed, his initial nervousness melting away. He found himself opening up, sharing stories about his journey as a stylist and the challenges of working in such a high-pressure environment. Keanu listened intently, nodding and offering words of encouragement. By the time Marco finished the haircut, the atmosphere in the salon had shifted again. The staff, who had been racked with guilt and apprehension, now felt a sense of awe and admiration. Keanu's kindness and humility had disarmed them completely, leaving them questioning their own assumptions and behaviors. As Keanu stood up and looked at himself in the mirror, he smiled. "Perfect," he said simply. Marco felt a swell of pride. "Thank you," he said, his voice thick with emotion. Keanu reached into his pocket and pulled out his wallet, but Marco quickly held up a hand. "No charge," he said firmly. "It's the least we can do." Keanu hesitated, then nodded. "Thank you," he said again, his tone sincere. As he walked toward the door, the entire salon seemed to hold its breath. Mia wanted to say something, to apologize, to explain, but the words wouldn't come. Just as Keanu reached the door, he turned back, his gaze sweeping over the room. "You have a beautiful place here," he said, his voice carrying warmth. "Take care." And with that, he was gone, leaving the staff speechless and the salon eerily quiet. But the story wasn't over yet. Let me know if you'd like to continue. As the door closed behind Keanu Reeves, the salon remained in stunned silence. Everyone seemed frozen, grappling with the weight of what had just happened. For a place that prided itself on catering to the elite, they had completely failed to recognize one of the most humble and beloved stars in Hollywood. Mia sank into her chair at the reception desk, her mind replaying every moment from the time Keanu had walked in. The curt tone she had used, the dismissive look she'd given him, it all came rushing back, and with it, an overwhelming sense of regret. She knew she had judged him unfairly, and the realization stung. Marco walked back to the main floor, still holding the scissors he had used, his face a mixture of pride and guilt. "Did you see how kind he was?" he said softly, breaking the silence. "He didn't hold any of it against us." Sarita nodded, her arms crossed tightly over her chest. "He could have said something, called us out. But he didn't. He just let it go." The other stylists murmured their agreement, each of them reflecting on how they had acted. The shame hung heavy in the air, but there was also something else, a lesson, unspoken but deeply felt. Just when they thought the day couldn't get more surreal, the phone at the reception desk rang. Mia jumped slightly, startled by the sound. She quickly picked it up, her voice shaky. "Hello, Bella Lux Salon. How can I help you?" The voice on the other end was calm and professional. "Hi, this is Sarah from the Reeves Foundation. I wanted to call and thank your staff for taking care of Mr. Reeves earlier today. He mentioned how much he appreciated the service." Mia's heart skipped a beat. Oh, of course," she stammered, completely caught off guard. "It was our pleasure." The woman on the phone continued, her tone friendly. "He also wanted me to let you know that he plans to recommend your salon to a few friends. He said it has a wonderful atmosphere." Mia nearly dropped the phone. She glanced around at her co-workers, who were all staring at her, waiting to hear what was being said. "That's incredible," she managed to reply. "Thank you so much for letting us know." After the call ended, she relayed the message to the rest of the team. The reaction was a mix of disbelief and astonishment. The very man they had underestimated and, frankly, disrespected had not only forgiven them, but was now praising them. Days passed, and word began to spread. The salon started receiving calls and visits from new clients, some of them high profile, mentioning that they had heard about the place through a certain someone. It became clear that Keanu's quiet endorsement had opened doors they hadn't even realized were closed. For Mia, Serena, Marco, and the rest of the staff, the experience left a deep impression. It wasn't just about the influx of business or the buzz of having served a celebrity. It was about the way Keanu's humility and grace had held up a mirror to their own behavior. They realized how quick they had been to judge, how easily they had dismissed someone based on appearances alone. One evening, as the salon was closing up, Mia sat at the front desk, scrolling through her phone. She came across a quote from Keanu Reeves that someone had posted online. Asterisk, be kind to others. You don't know what they're going through. Asterisk. The words struck her deeply, taking on a whole new meaning after what had happened. She saved the quote and decided to print it out, placing it on the wall behind the reception desk where everyone could see it. The salon never went back to being exactly the way it was before. The staff became more mindful, more welcoming, and less quick to judge. They treated every client, whether they looked like they belonged there or not, with the same level of respect and care. And every now and then, when things got busy or tensions ran high, someone would glance at the quote on the wall and remember the day Keanu Reeves walked in, not to teach them a lesson, but to remind them of what kindness truly looks like. In the end, it wasn't just a haircut. It was a moment that changed them all, leaving behind a story they would never forget.